Imagine hiding in the wilderness for years, hating the entire world. The police are hunting you, but you're always one step ahead. You believe planes spray poison, corporations are poisoning people, and your only salvation is complete isolation. Then, one day, they find you, and the hunt begins. This is the true story of Michael Oros, Canada's most elusive hermit killer. In 1984, when this story took place, he was 32 years old. Almost nothing was known about the man initially. He arrived in Canada around 1972 from a commune in New Mexico. You can't even imagine how completely insane this guy was. Michael Oros hated airplanes. He lived with the conviction that they sprayed poison onto the land, and that some of this poison fell on him and his dogs. He also hated the police. They were the guardians of the society he wanted to escape. This guy constantly talked about how factories poisoned the water, how airplanes sprayed toxins, and how the world was doomed. The only option left for him, he believed, to live deep in the wilderness, where global corporations couldn't reach him. And he successfully carried out his plan. He spent about 14 years in the forests of Canada, living as a recluse. Alone and roaming across 50,000 square kilometers of Canadian wilderness, he ate whatever he could find, wild game, berries, or food left behind in hunting cabins and fishing huts. One of the guys who ran into him put it like this: "Every damn time a plane buzzed overhead, Mike would snap, convicted they were dusting him with mine poison, swore it was rewiring his brain, said his skull would erupt with static the moment that engine whine hit, and it'd take hours before the phantom trails faded from his vision." According to some accounts, he even shot at planes flying overhead. However, no official reports were filed, so it's likely he never hit anything. Still, rumors about it spread in local villages. The locals saw him as a crazy hermit. They both feared and respected him for his wilderness survival skills. They called him nothing other than Crazy Mike or Free Mike. And the locals, remembering his strange ideas, say that he claimed that big companies put poison in food, that water is filled with chemicals that can kill, and that poisons are everywhere and are killing people. He wanted to escape and came to the Canadian wilderness in search of a new life. And he found it on the banks of the Cheslada River, 50 kilometers north of Telegraph Creek. There, he built a cabin. This area is practically uninhabited by people. It is a vast, plateau-like territory with rolling mountains, dense forests, and huge swamps. Only rare hunters and tourists ventured here. Mike believed that all the land in this area belonged to him. Therefore, everything on it also belonged to him. This included hunters' cabins, fishing camps, and their contents. And this hermit simply robbed local fishermen's and hunters' cabins, taking not only food, but also valuable items. Sometimes for quite large sums. Moreover, he didn't even hide much, leaving strange poems and messages on the cabin walls. Like, "I am a free man, leave me alone." He used the symbol of an Orthodox cross, which he burned onto trees in the area, marking his trail. And the local hunters weren't the softest guys either. And they quickly made it clear to him that this was not allowed. They drove him out of Telegraph Creek. From Telegraph Creek, he moved to the Teslin Lake area, where he began illegally setting traps, selling furs, and hunting animals for meat. He moved freely. From Telegraph Creek north to Teslin, and from Teslin Lake west to Atlin, both in summer and winter. And so, Mike Oros had no permanent home. He used other people's hunting and fishing cabins, traveling across a vast territory. He often did this by dog's lead, easily covering 80 kilometers a day. He led a hermetic and nomadic life. And the hermit loved his dogs very much. The locals remember it like this: they were his family. He used them to carry his things. 14 years of such a life undoubtedly affected his already damaged psyche. He survived solely on his own resources, the wild nature, and the animals that roamed there. Then suddenly, he gained a friend. a man named Gunter Lish, a German and former prisoner of war who had served time in Siberian camps. Clearly, he too wanted to be left alone. This shy and silent man learned to set traps and first met Mike on the old trail of Telegraph Creek. They became good friends. In Lish's cabin, there was even a photograph on the wall of him and Mike, standing and smiling. Almost nothing is known about their relationship, as both were very secretive and closed off. However, we know that for unknown reasons, Lish, who set traps east of Atlin, began building a cabin in July 1981, roughly 100 meters from Mike's cabin. Near Hutsalog Lake, south of Teslin Lake, this was Mike's territory, and it seems he didn't object. Notably, this was far from Lish's usual trap lines. One day, Lish arranged to be picked up by plane on September 10, 1981. But when the plane came for leisure, only Free Mike emerged from those trees, eyes hollow, movements twitching like a trapped animal. The pilot later stated, "That wasn't a man waiting there, that was a living warning." During the conversation, Mike trembled, claimed he hardly knew Lish, and acted strangely. The pilot, last name Wybe, reported this to the police. But upon arriving, the police found neither Mike nor his German friend. No one knew these forests like Free Mike, and hiding was no trouble for him. Earlier, in the year 1980, the police suspected Mike Oros of stealing a boat on the Nikina River. Officer Brooms, who investigated this case, noticed a damaged boat and went to examine it. All he found was a handwritten note, the handwriting matching that of Mike Oros. An arrest warrant was issued then, but Oros hid in the forests, and gradually, the case was forgotten. Yet the suspicious connection with the disappearance of Lish made the police take action. They caught up with him in March of the year 1982 at his cabin on Hutsalog Lake. The police dispatched a team of men by helicopter. According to the pilot, Oros apparently heard they were looking for him by monitoring radio transmissions on his receiver. They didn't catch him off guard. He was waiting for them. When they landed, Oros appeared in the doorway with a pistol of .44 caliber in his hand. But then he seemed to change his mind about shooting. He went back into his cabin, came out again, and tied up the dogs. Two plainclothes officers approached the door under the cover of a sniper. After a brief confrontation, he was arrested. And in Oros' cabin, they found many of Lish's belongings. There was his .22 caliber pistol, some of his photography equipment, and construction tools. What happened next would send him spiraling into complete insanity. The police took him to Atlin to place him in custody. He was sent for 1 month of psychiatric evaluation in Vancouver. Not knowing what to do with his pack of dogs while he was in prison, the police decided to euthanize them. When Oros found out about this, he was absolutely furious. He hadn't liked the police before, but this was the final straw. And surprisingly, the psychiatric evaluation found him to be sane. And in August of the year 1982, the judge acquitted him of the charges of illegal possession of a firearm, both theft, causing harm through deception of the police officer conducting the search, and possession of items that were believed to belong to the missing Lish. He was fully acquitted and free. Mike returned to his life in the woods. According to sources, he fancied himself a writer, creating short stories and poems about the wilderness. He was the hero of his own tales, a man who escaped a corrupt criminal world to save young girls from the vices of society. Michael lived outside hunting and trapping laws. He did not participate in society, preferring to raid when he needed something, otherwise avoiding people. He only appeared in settlements to buy ammunition for his rifles and some food. Around this time, Oros directed the lion's share of his hatred toward police officers. He wrote in his last diary that focusing his hatred allowed him to set back and enjoy myself, doing a few things I wanted to do before I died. One of those things may have been the murder of Cindy Elrod, whose body was found on August 23, 1983, in Juneau. The night before, Elrod had been seen at a bar with a man described as having long, sandy blonde hair like Oros, and being within a similar age, height, and weight range. But the case still hasn't been solved, and the police haven't released any exact details about it. Yet the investigators refused to surrender. They simply pivoted to the one thread they could actually prove. Specifically, what exactly happened to 52-year-old Gunter Lish? This question haunted the local police, and they searched diligently. They conducted extensive searches around Mike's cabin in September and October of 1981, and searched again with dogs in May of 1982, but no traces of the missing man were ever found. Free Mike continued to roam the forests, taking whatever he wanted from hunting cabins, and telling occasional travelers that passing planes were spraying castration chemicals. In the psychiatric report submitted during the investigation, Oros was described as a man suffering from paranoid delusions, but falling under the category of legally sane. In late August of 1985, Atlin Police Colonel Barry Erickson and Constable Jack Warner combed the area around Oros' cabin once more. The same territory police had searched at least 3 times since Lish's disappearance. Every cop instinct in Erickson's body screamed that the answer was hiding in plain sight. By pure chance, after straying from the trail, Erickson spotted something white in the moss. Bending down, he pushed aside the moss and saw a human skull. The bones were scattered, as if dragged by an animal. Forensic teams were called to the scene. Across an area of 50 square meters, approximately 350 meters south of Oros' cabin, and not far from the lakeshore, they found the skull, jawbone, pelvis, and bones of the upper limbs. Fragments of a shirt and some plastic were found, closer to the lakeshore. Forensic expert Skinner noted there were no signs of burial in the vicinity, no cut marks on the bones indicating dismemberment. However, there were numerous tooth marks, suggesting the body had been scavenged by animals, most likely bears. In his opinion, the body had probably not been buried on land, as the condition of the bones indicated they had likely been submerged in the lake. The clothing remnants and a piece of plastic wrapped around one of the shoulder blades suggested the body had been enclosed in plastic sheeting, dumped into the lake, later resurfaced, and was then consumed by animals. After the bones were discovered, Erickson sent them for forensic analysis after noticing a suspicious hole in the right scapula. Forensic pathologist Dr. Ferris described the hole in his report as a nearly perfect circular shape, approximately 85 millimeters in diameter. His exact words, "This is most likely a bullet entry wound. It corresponds to a 9mm caliber round. The bullet appears to have entered from the back, penetrating this part of the body. It caused severe damage to the upper right thoracic structure, including the upper lobe of the right lung and the major branches of the aorta leading to the right side of the neck and right arm. The injuries would have caused massive bleeding into the right chest cavity, and without immediate medical attention, death would have occurred within minutes. Dental records confirmed the skull belonged to Lish. While all these searches and examinations were taking place, Free Mike had disappeared again. Moreover, the police didn't have the necessary paperwork for his arrest. One day, a family from Whitehorse went by snowmobile to check their cabin at the southwestern end of the lake. They hadn't been there since the previous spring. Upon entering, they found someone had been living there, property was missing, and damage totaling several $1,000s had been done. He left the partially butchered remains of a cow moose inside. Clumps of hair and rotting blood were splattered on walls and soaked into the floorboards. Through binoculars, they spotted Crazy Mike walking along a trail. Recognizing him, they decided not to confront him. After returning to civilization, they filed a police report. Police flew to the lake by plane to inspect the cabin. They spotted Oros walking across the ice. Apparently unaware the plane carried police, he didn't react at first. When they flew closer to observe him, Crazy Mike suddenly fired at the aircraft. While no serious damage was caused, the police chose to return to town and call for backup. Two Bell helicopters transported a tactical team from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, along with police dogs. They were near the lake around noon, but they didn't dare fly too close, fearing Mad Mike might shoot down the helicopters with his rifle. They landed some distance from the cabin and began making their way through deep snow toward Mike's cabin. Only this man, so obsessed with airplanes, had clearly heard the helicopter rotors from far away. And this time, Mike was prepared to meet the police. The police squad moved across open terrain. The deep snow broke them into smaller groups. They apparently thought Oros's cabin was still far away and they were in no danger. Meanwhile, Free Mike waited in ambush, armed with 2 rifles and plenty of ammunition. Knowing the forest perfectly, he quietly circled behind their group. When they became spread out, he opened fire from cover, instantly killing a young constable of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police who specialized in police dog handling. But Free Mike shot him from ambush. Then he turned his rifle toward Officer Rogers, just 44 yards away. Rogers later described an out-of-body experience, watching from above as Oros cycled the bolt, aimed and fired. Yet in that frozen moment, Rogers' finger tightened on the trigger. A single shot rang out, and Oros fell lifeless. Forensic analysis would later show Oros' rifle had malfunctioned, the primer dented but failed to ignite. In that split second, as Oros' weapon failed, Rogers' bullet flew true. A final, fatal twist of fate. The universe itself had turned against Oros. The subsequent court found him guilty, not only of killing the constable, but also of murdering Gunter Lish, whom he had shot in the back with his pistol, wrapped the body in plastic, and drowned in the lake near his cabin. Thus ended the story of Mad Mike. Later, writer Varon Frolic would write about this in his book, Descent into Madness, The Diary of a Killer.